Imagine dust kicking up in the wind, the creak of wooden boards under worn boots, and the unmistakable swing of saloon doors flung open at sundown. You've just stepped into the beating heart of a frontier town, the saloon. More than just a watering hole, the saloon was a stage for drama, ambition, danger, and survival. Cowboys drowned long days in warm whiskey, gamblers risked everything on a single card, and strangers could become enemies with just one glare too many. Hollywood often paints saloons as chaotic shootouts waiting to happen, but the truth is both far wilder and far more human. So saddle up. Let's step back in time and walk through the dust and gun smoke to discover what really went down in a Wild West saloon. When a new frontier town popped up, whether thanks to cattle drives, railroads, or a gold strike, what do you think was built first? Not the sheriff's office, not the church, not even the general store. It was the saloon. Before the roads were paved or the town had a name, someone had already pitched a tent, unpacked a barrel of cheap whiskey, and started pouring drinks. These early saloons were often little more than makeshift lean-tos, canvas roofs, rough planks for walls, a few wooden stools, and a whole lot of ambition. Why? Because wherever people gathered, there was money to be made off their thirst, their boredom, and their dreams. As the frontier swelled with ranchers, miners, railroad workers, and dreamers, saloons exploded in number. Take Fort Worth, Texas. By the 1880s, it had over 60 saloons, including the famous White Elephant Saloon. Denver? It started with just 30 in 1858, but by 1890, that number had swelled to nearly 500. You could hit a different saloon every day for a year and still have some left over. And in places like San Francisco during the gold rush, saloons were opening at a rate of nearly one per day. Entire mining towns were born, boomed, and busted, all while the clink of glasses echoed down the dusty streets. Not all saloons were created equal. A shanty near a railroad camp in Wyoming looked nothing like the velvet-curtained bars in San Francisco or Dodge City. In rougher towns, floors were made of dirt, drinks were lukewarm, and the sawdust scattered on the floor wasn't just for looks. It was to soak up whatever got spilled, or spit. Spitting, by the way, was a real issue. Most cowboys chewed tobacco, and while spittoons dotted the bar rooms, many still aimed for the floor. Some saloons even hung signs that read, "If you spit on the floor at home, feel free to spit here. We want you to feel comfortable." But elsewhere, saloons were grand affairs with carved mahogany bars, mirrored walls, and chandeliers. Price tags reflected this too. A shot of whiskey in Colorado might cost 25 cents. But if you were way up north in the Yukon, that same drink could cost double or more. Bartenders in the Wild West weren't just drink slingers, they were part psychologist, part bouncer, part showman, and full-time survivors. They had to read a room, de-escalate fights, keep the whiskey flowing, and ensure the place didn't burn to the ground before last call. Between 1860 and 1900, the number of bartenders in the West ballooned from just a few thousand to nearly 50,000. Some were legendary. James Erupt, Wyatt Earp's brother, ran a successful saloon in Wichita while sending patrons to his wife's nearby brothel. Others learned their trade from guides like The Bartender's Guide, How to Mix All Kinds of Plain and Fancy Drinks. And every good barkeep knew how to keep gamblers, especially the losers, just drunk enough to stay in the game. Saloons were the casinos of the Wild West. Poker was played, sure, but the true king of the card table was a game called Pharaoh. Unlike poker, Pharaoh was fast, thrilling, and brutally unforgiving. Players bet on which card would be drawn next. If they guessed wrong, and they often did, the house took their money. And make no mistake, the house almost always won. Dealers used rigged decks, sleight of hand, and even hidden mirrors. Yet gamblers came back night after night, chasing fortune or fame. Some won big, others lost everything. And a few, they lost their lives. The Wild West earned its violent reputation honestly. With little in the way of law enforcement, justice was often served with a revolver. Take the 1871 gunfight in Abilene, Kansas. Wild Bill Hickok, then serving as marshal, tried to arrest saloon owner Phil Coe after he fired his gun outside the bar. Coe shot at Hickok and missed. Hickok didn't. He shot Coe twice in the stomach, but in the chaos, Hickok also accidentally killed his own deputy, Mike Williams. That mistake haunted him for the rest of his life. Ironically, Wild Bill would be gunned down in a saloon just 5 years later while playing poker, the infamous dead man's hand in his fingers. While movies might make it seem like only white cowboys and mustached sheriffs walked through saloon doors, the West was more diverse than most people realize. Chinese immigrants, black cowboys, Mexican vaqueros all built their own gathering spaces when they weren't welcome in white-owned saloons. In Virginia City, Nevada, a black businessman named William Brown founded the Boston Saloon. It was no dive. Archaeologists later uncovered champagne bottles and imported oysters from the site. Mexican cantinas across Texas and New Mexico served tequila and mezcal instead of watered-down frontier whiskey. In Chinese saloons, the drink of choice was baijiu, a spirit so strong it made cowboy whiskey taste like lemonade. And then there were the saloon girls. Their job wasn't just to dance, it was to keep the men drinking. Often their drinks were just tea or watered-down liquor, but the customer paid full price, believing they were sharing a strong round of whiskey. Some women were entertainers, others were enforcers. Take Big Minnie Branscombe, 6 feet tall, 230 pounds, and working in Tombstone, Arizona. When a drunk cowboy fired into the ceiling one night, Big Minnie didn't wait for the marshal. She threw him out herself. She was hired full-time as security after that. Because let's face it, who's going to argue with Big Minnie? Not everyone saw saloons as places of fun and freedom. By the late 1800s, the Temperance movement had found a new target, the saloon itself. Organizations like the Anti-Saloon League didn't just preach, they pushed laws, and they won. By 1912, 9 states had banned alcohol. Then, in 1919, Prohibition became federal law. The Wild West Saloon, as it had been known, was officially outlawed. But of course, people didn't stop drinking. They just went underground. The saloon wasn't just a bar. It was the nerve center of the American frontier. It was where fortunes were won, reputations made, or ruined, and history was written in smoke, whiskey, and spilled blood.